and down, I will remain. And even if it's hard to see, I still believe your hands on me. Out of the fog, the sun will rise. Reveal yourself, no compromise. I'm standing here on holy ground, longing to see your plans for me. Out of the fog, the sun will rise. Reveal yourself, no compromise. I'm standing here on holy ground, longing to see your plans for me. Out of the fog, out of the fog, out of the fog, out of the fog. Thank you very much.
I spoke to a gentleman this week, an elderly gentleman. When I say elderly, he was 95 years old. 95, very sprite, moving around, driving a brand new Subaru that I'd like to have. And he, although he does admit that he can't work all the technology, he calls a friend to tell him how to work things. But he attends his meetings, and he's pretty darn sharp for 95. So he was joking around in conversation with us last Sunday, and he said that he affirms that he wakes up every single morning on the right side of the bed, and it has done really good for him. And I said, that's great. I think that's great. That's really working for you. And he goes, yeah, I just make sure I push the wrong side of the bed up against the wall so I don't get out on that side. And that's his opinion. That's what works for him. That's a good one. When I've had the opportunities to speak with you recently, I've been referencing this Living the Science of Mind book, and I finally remembered to bring it. So I've ordered a couple copies. I'm surprised they weren't here today. They should be here, then I guess tomorrow. But they'll be out there for us to purchase over the next few weeks. It's a great book by Ernest Holmes. Farrell read his piece from it. And it's organized in a way that is very easy to read about spirit and then man and then the things that we do in life. It's a fabulous book. I'm still taking some information from that because that is the book that actually the Home Office is writing their talks around for this year. So today I'm using a section about desire, opinion, and revelation, and I'll merge that right into next week. I'm speaking next week too, hopefully not to scare you away in advance, but I'll move today's talk into next week, which is about belief, faith, and prayer. And from all of this, I'm using our view of reason and a little of science thrown in there, and to talk about how opinions and desires and revelation kind of fit into the scheme of things. So let me ask you first, how many people have strong desires for things that they would like to have or like to have happen? I would think that's most people. Okay. So how many people have opinions about those things or very strong opinions about anything? Okay. And then, so here's an interesting one. Has anyone ever had what they felt was a revelation from above? Ah, okay. And you don't have to answer this one out loud, but did you ever question it? Did you question, where did that really come from, and what did that really mean? I know I certainly do sometimes, I'm not sure. But do you think you interpreted the message the exact way it came into your head? Or did you have to reword it in a way that made sense to you to make it fit into how you perceive the world? Just think about that for a minute. And actually, what do I even mean by that? When we teach our spiritual practice of visioning, it's a practice for a lot of people to take a response that we get into our head and record it exactly as it comes in. That takes practice for a lot of people. And in envisioning, we ask a question and we train to just take that message and write it down. Don't try to doctor it or reword it. Even if it sounds really crazy, write it down exactly as it came in, because that's the message from Spirit. And some people can really get a wow when they realize that they've received something that's not in their regular wording or not in the way that they would, make a sentence. But it takes a practice to do that, and it's important. So we'll talk more about that. Our desires, our opinions of things, and what we wish to think is revelation, a revelation from the high and mighty, shapes our world every day, day in and day out. We all have desires. We certainly all have opinions about most things. And gosh, most of us would like to think that what comes to us through inspiration or revelation comes directly from what we believe would be the source of everything for us. If we are not in a conscious practice of personal work and looking at how beliefs are developed, how they shape our opinions, how even our desires develop playing out against reality, our opinions and our desires can have the capability to encapsulate a revelation or an inspiration. And when that happens, even something we get in meditation, we can tend to reinterpret that message into something that we want it to be, what we think it should be. Right? Yep, yeah, happens. And let me repeat that again, because I kind of had a couple phrases in there. If we're not aware of how our beliefs are developed, how our beliefs have shaped our opinions and our reactions, and how our desires fit into reality, then all that stuff in our head can turn a revelation upside down and point us in the wrong direction. And this has been demonstrated time and time again throughout history. Some of our desires and our opinions come out of what I've mentioned before as group mind, group race mind, the mind frame of a culture or an environment when we're not even aware of it. We might do something very different when we're in a crowd than we would do by ourselves if we're alone. Carl Jung calls it the collective unconscious. And that can be positive or negative. I don't mean it that it's always something negative. We can be guided by a wave thought of power that we're not consciously in touch with. It happens. Do we really get revelations? It's a big word. It's a word of power, so to speak, the way it's been used in our culture. But yes, we do. We actually get them all the time. We get revelation and inspiration all the time. Just most of us don't know it. We've been trained to think that only the special people get the revelations. But we're special, you're special, right? God made all of us special because we were all made equally. But that's that culture thing that's happened. So when those inspirations and revelations come, we think it's something else and we shrug it off or we don't pay attention. But when we're aware that something has come, you've had that download, two things sometimes happen. We can follow it. We go, and we follow it just the way it was given, and maybe it guides us into something really good for our life and something that we're to do. Or we can be unaware of what that little inkling was, and we turn it off, or we turn it into something about our own opinions and our judgment and use it in a very different way. And sometimes it's used dangerously. This is where revelations have had people end up in splitting hairs over the last 2017 years. Revelation itself is defined as unveiling a disclosure of truth. But there's been times when revelations have been used as a weapon, or revelations have been used as a cause of force to even start long wars, putting man against man, the stories in the Bible and the Crusades and those things. And someone believed they got a revelation, whether they said it was from a divine source, maybe it came from God, or it came from the oracle, a sage or a seer. Yeah, I said that right. And you had to accept what that message was, or a war was started, or you were killed. Men believed that they killed for the glory of God. I was going to say back then, but there are some groups now who still follow that trend, that thought. We should use our good judgment and be leery of believing in a revelation from someone that preaches against unity or against goodness and compassion. And that's where I want to go with this. I don't believe that divine truth is revealed to start wars. That thing that we know as our philosophy, as divine intelligence or infinite mind, divine love, does not instruct us to create separation or to harm others. It guides us for unity, healing, and growth. Yes? Yes. We know divine as love, as beauty, as harmony, and reason. And that source that we believe made all of this would not have its creations destroy each other. Reason is the power of the mind to think, to understand, to form judgments through logic, and that's what goes on in our heads all the time, kind of automatically. Well, for most of you, I think sometimes the judgment's still out lately on what my head's doing. However, most of you are going through this process all the time. It's just what happens. We don't even have to think about it. But we take our daily information, we make sense of it in our world according to spiritual principles that we teach. And it's hoped that this would be the path to be aware of an inspiration or revelation that comes to you, that comes to each of us, and that we'll use it wisely and for good. Desires are fun. They feel good. They're great because they call us into action. We do things from our desire. Opinions, well, opinions are just human nature. We all have opinions about things. It just kind of happens, sometimes they just kind of fall out. But opinions aren't actually real, believe it or not. They're titles and themes that we give to stuff that goes on around us from our beliefs, and sometimes they have come from other people. They didn't even come from us. And they can be preconceived notions that cloud our perception of what really is going on, of reality. Here's a metaphor for you about that. An astigmatism. I have an astigmatism in one of my eyes. A lot of people do. It's a vision problem caused by an error in the shape of your cornea in the front of your eye. And the irregular shape causes the image to not be transferred correctly back to your retina. And this can change the way you perceive the image. And it's the same way that when our desires or opinions and judgments are out of alignment, it causes our perception to be blurry and fuzzy and distorted. And the messages may not be the same. Make sense? Yeah. Following a spiritual practice on a regular basis like meditation, contemplation, journaling, affirmative prayer, we talk about this a lot, spending time in stillness gives us the opportunity to be in communion with Spirit and discern how we are to be in the world. Divine guidance never leads to harm, always to wholeness and oneness. Martin Luther was a major figure in the Protestant Reformation, in the 16th century. He claimed to have met the devil. He claimed that the devil appeared to him in his study. Now we, those of us in Science of Mind, we teach that we don't really believe in the devil. As Ernest Holmes, our founder, says, intelligence compels us to admit that the devil is a mythological figure with no reality outside of man's consciousness. But Luther's belief in the devil, and during that time period, was so strong, and it was so cultural, that what we think he saw was the belief personification of what was a universal belief about the devil. It was so strong in his thought and in his belief system that he actually had an outpicturing of his imagination. Now that's an extreme example of group thought. It's where he was at the time. And it was so strong it overpowered him. So belief in different psychic levels can be so strong in a culture and within a group of people and influencing them, and even some religions. And religions are a big element in carrying the message of fear and salvation, being saved, being cared for. It's no wonder sometimes that so many people in religious groups will follow a belief that God ordains suffering or impoverishment or unhappiness, and that he demands killing to get on his good side. Some groups get caught up in that because they have not, their only instruction and what they understand is to follow the revelation of a different leader. I have to say that what came to mind as I wrote this was Jonestown. 1978. It's not uplifting, but it is an example in our current time frame. In 1978, the cult of American people living in Guyana were under the leadership of Jim Jones, and they called it Jonestown. And in his town of followers, there were 900 people. And on a particular day, he told them that the world was corrupt and they should not live in it any longer. And 900 men, women, and children committed suicide together by drinking cyanide in Kool-Aid. Now, it wasn't really that the world was corrupt. Jim Jones had a long list of personal corruption and had been doing it for a long time, and he had a need for power. And when he realized his time was up because there was some other political shootings that he was at the base of during that time, he thought he should take all of his followers with him. Now, there were some people who actually woke up during that day from that hypnotic state of following him and realized their own perception of what was going on, that this didn't quite seem right. But Jim Jones didn't like people to leave him, and so everyone died that day, one way or another. And it's a very sad story, but it is what happens when a group can get so contained. I guess that's why they call those cults, but they get so contained in someone else's revelation. Later, after that time, I guess it was a couple months later, there was a story written about a follower who had been in the United States on that day. And she was really upset that she had not been there to take her life with her comrades because she was still so caught up in somebody else's story about life. Take a breath. That's a big one. Ernest Holmes says that we are drawn towards those things that we mentally image. When we're caught up in group mind, we can get stuck. Things get said or done that entice us more as a group than individually. And that's what happened in Jamestown. That's what happens in a lot of big kinds of groups. So some of those people it happens in some of these more established religions. It takes us beyond where we think we need to go. But it's the imagery in our mind, their words, how they work the words and what they do allows people to get caught in that because they're looking for something outside of themselves. I am not against religion. It may sound like that in the moment, but I'm trying to make a point. I am for individuals finding their way and their own growth, and people do that the best way they can for themselves through their own inspiration and their revelation. And sometimes the message for them is to seek group support. I'm all for that. But it's also important to use discernment where we go. And what are we as this group? We're in a group. We are a philosophy, we are a movement that offers guidance and instruction to find your own answers and guidance from Spirit. I am not talking about giving yourself over to a man in the sky or in the heavens. There is a spark of love within each and every individual that you are created with, and it sits there waiting for you, loving you, waiting to show you what love is, where love is in the world, even what your purpose is, and how you are connected to every living thing that exists. Do not check your brain at the door. Wherever you go, you will always be guided and kind of pulled to different kinds of events. But do not check your brain at the door. And we certainly don't ask you to do that here. You are encouraged to listen, to learn, to discern, and to practice what you've been given. You'll find what works for you, what is repeatable. You will experience the changes and the healing that you may desire. And you always have choice. You can choose how you want to do all of this. The mind is a powerful thing. Don't give it away. I might sound like a commercial. I don't mean to. Take a breath, kind of shake it off for a minute. Our philosophy is called Science of Mind, and Ernest Holmes chose that name because science deals with facts and not opinions. And the facts are broken down into principles which do not change. Science also works through the rule of reason and facts that can lead you to spiritual truth. The information that we provide and teach is about going within to receive your own revelation for you from spirit and not superstition. We're not against religion because everyone needs to be where they need to be in the moment. And that's different for everyone. I fully understand the boundaries of particular religions serve those members in where they are in the moment. And that's good for them. It's what they're looking for. Those of us sitting here are looking for this. And that's good for everyone. We believe that through daily spiritual practice and our affirmative prayer that we call spiritual mind treatment, which is scientific, that we can discern our world and we can change the things that do not work for us. We say it is scientific because what we practice is provable, it is repeatable with positive results for the outcome of our desires and the choice to have a good life and create a world that we want to live in. And when we learn to discern the world around us, to work life through reason and spiritual truth, we learn to hear our own revelations and not become a puppet to someone else's. Spiritual practice provides the opportunity to go within to the stillness, to the quiet space, to be in communion with Spirit, to discern how we are to be in the world and grow, and to know who we are, and to know your own purpose. We can learn to consciously release some desires and opinions and judgments that filter that perception, our own perception. We are to use the full capacity of our minds to discern the wisdom and compassion that is revealed to us. Divine guidance never leads to harm, always to wholeness and to oneness. Spiritual practice opens us to love ourselves, to love those around us, and the universe. We can shed the stories that limit us in order to be open, to be receptive to Spirit's lead. Yes? Yes. I'll end with this quote. It's from Emmett Fox. Never try to force other people to accept spiritual truth. Instead, see to it that they are so favorably impressed by your own life and conduct and the peace and joy that radiates from you that they will come running to you by their own accord, begging you to give them the wonderful thing that you have. When you are receiving your own inspiration and your own revelations, when you are looking at where your beliefs come from, and do you still want to have those beliefs? What are your desires and your opinions? Do they ever need reviewing or changing? You start to shine this light that gets bigger and brighter and fuller because you are in that communication, in that communion with Spirit. And people see that. And you shine your light, and people want to know where that comes from. So let's do that this week. We'll have our practitioners stand and we'll take this into prayer. So I recognize right here and right now, there is only one. There is only one life. That life is good. That life is very good. That life is my life now. That life, which I call the divine, that expression has created everything that I see and touch and know. It has created every individual here. It has created me. And I am overjoyed to know that this philosophy fills me with love every moment of every day. I am overjoyed and appreciative and in so much gratitude to know that I am filled with divine love and that it guides me. It makes the crooked way straight before me. It provides the footing under every step, everywhere I go, every day. As I sit within my spiritual practice and open my mind and my heart, I learn more how it speaks to me. I learn to know what life is. I learn to know that I am limitless in my thought. And what I think and what I imagine and what I desire has a way to show up in my life, because this thing that I call spirit and source is just waiting for me to respond to it. It is loving. It is wholeness. It is joy. It is beauty. It is freedom. It is abundance. It is fullness. And I allow all of that to be everything I am and every person in this room, every individual. As I speak the word through first person, I know because there's only one mind, I speak it for every individual in this room. And I know that revelation is always forthcoming. Inspiration is always happening because the creative process of the divine never stops. It is constantly speaking to every individual, every creation, waiting for us to hear. And how good that is. Each individual is guided to grow their life, their mind, their thoughts, and their desires to move and flower into their own personal purpose to make their world loving and enjoyable, which then merges into the collective. How good is that? I say yes. I say yes. And I call for that good to constantly grow louder and louder. Even trip me if it needs to, because I know love catches me. So with joy in my heart, with absolute good, I release this into the law. And I know that that divine revelation that is for good is happening in the mind of every student in schools, because it is our young people that will rise and stand and know what they want and know what is right and loving and safe. And it won't be for any other cause but for living. And I know that to be good and very good. So I give thanks for what has come and what is coming. We offer prayers and love and guidance to every family in the school in Florida. And I give thanks for every priest and teacher and rabbi and servant guiding every individual on this planet today that is in trauma or that needs support. Because Spirit is right there where they are in every language and in every place and in every word. And that is good. So with acceptance, I say yes. With gratitude, I say yes. And I release this into the law. And together we say, and so it is.